Today, Africa has become the only continent where income inequality and GDP diversity between countries is the highest amongst anywhere else in the world. Despite a total of 54 counties in the entire continent, only 5 countries account for more than 65% of the entire African GDP. And it's not getting better anytime soon. Despite being rich in natural resources and having an easy access to the entire world, widespread unethical practices, illegal mining, and government corruption has made the situation so worst that even few rich countries in Africa lost more than 50% of their GDP in just a few days. One of those countries is Nigeria. One of the largest populations and economy in all of Africa that is rich with wealth of natural resources stands in a good position for global trade across the Atlantic. Many economists find the country incredibly exciting as an economic hub that the rest of the region could grow around. In 2011, a group of economists predicted that Nigeria would become the fastest growing economy in the world between 2010 and 2050. And for a brief moment, that future seemed possible. The nation was emerging as a resource, trade, and financial hub, a bridge between Africa and the global economy. But by 2014, that dream began to crumble. Since then, Nigeria has become one of the fastest shrinking economies in the world. The reasons behind this decline are familiar: corruption, instability, and poor leadership. Yet a much deeper cause reveal a complex story of a lost potential, damaged reputation, and structural imbalance. When many people think of Nigeria, they think of scam emails from a so-called Nigerian prince. It's an old stereotype, but one that still hurts the country's image even today. If Nigeria is to attract foreign investment and rebuild its economy, it must first rebuild trust. Investors hesitate when a nation's global identity is tied to fraud and conflict. Ironically, it was Nigeria's unique mix of wealth, poverty, and weak institutions that helped create that image in the first place. So can countries like Nigeria regain its lost GDP? Well, let's find out. Nigeria's modern history is shaped by both opportunity and exploitation. Centuries of the Atlantic slave trade left deep divisions among its many tribes, divisions that still persist today. In the 1950s, as independence from the British colonialism approached, Nigeria discovered vast oil reserves. By 1960, when independence was finally achieved, many believed Nigeria could become Africa's richest nation. But cultural unity proved harder than independence. Religious, ethnic, and regional tensions quickly surfaced all across the country post-independence. The country was loosely divided into 4 regions, but distrust between the North and the South soon erupted into violence. By 1966, Nigeria had plunged into bloody conflicts that would lead to multiple coups and a fragile federal system. Colonialism left behind only the shell of government institutions, a systems designed for extraction, not development. In the decades that followed, corrupt politicians and military rulers enriched themselves through oil revenue, while poverty became more deepened. Corruption became the norm, and between coups, civil wars, and rigged elections, the country never built the stable foundations it needed. Oil became both Nigeria's greatest strength and its biggest weakness. It provided enormous revenue, but made the economy dangerously dependent on a single, volatile export. By the 1980s, oil accounted for nearly 90% of exports and 3/4 of government income. So when the oil prices finally dropped, everything else fell apart. As economic hardship spread, many turned to scams and fraud just to survive. Weak governance and growing access to communications made Nigeria infamous for the so-called 419 scams, named after the section of the Nigerian Criminal Code dealing with fraud. These schemes tricked foreign investors with fake oil deals and money-cleaning stories. Nigeria had just enough infrastructure to reach the world, but not enough jobs or stability to sustain its people. What began as survival for some became an international stigma for everyone. Even today, scams originating elsewhere are still blamed on Nigerians, further damaging the country's image. This negative branding has had lasting consequences. Nations rise not just through economics, but through trust. And Nigeria's trust deficit became one of its biggest barriers to progress. But in the early 2000s, the future looked bright again. Nigeria's GDP was growing at an impressive 7% a year. Oil exports drove prosperity, but agriculture and manufacturing were also on the rise. Nearly 70% of Nigerians worked in farming, and manufacturing output grew from under $10 billion in the 1990s to over $50 billion by 2014. Nigeria was also one of the first African countries to embrace the internet. Telecom licenses were granted in 2001, and within 2 years, millions were connected. This opened doors for trade, education, and innovation. For a brief time, it seemed Nigeria might finally achieve the economic independence it had been chasing for decades. But the underlying problems never went away. Institutions remained weak, corruption rampant, and productivity stagnant. Then came the oil price crash of 2014 to 2016. Prices fell by almost half, and the illusion of stability vanished. With industries so dependent on oil revenue, the shock rippled through every sector. Agriculture struggled with low yields and outdated methods while millions lost jobs. Urbanization meant fewer people could rely on subsistence farming. GDP growth no longer reflected the reality of daily life. Regional inequality became another deep wound. The South, rich in oil and farmland, grew more prosperous, while the North, by contrast, was dry, poor, and underdeveloped. In most countries, people would migrate toward opportunity, but Nigeria's tribal and cultural loyalties, cemented by colonial boundaries, made that difficult. Poverty in the North also fueled extremism. Groups like Boko Haram found recruits among young men with no jobs and no hope. Violence devastated communities and scared away investors. Entire regions became ungovernable, trapping millions in a cycle of fear and unemployment. Meanwhile, corruption continued to drain public funds. Infrastructure projects stalled, education declined, and the economy became increasingly dependent on oil revenue that wasn't reaching the people. Nigeria could have become Africa's financial capital, a hub for trade, banking, and industry. But its reputation, instability, and lack of trust scared away those who might have helped build that future. In 2005 alone, global losses from Nigerian-linked scams totaled $3.2 billion, the exact same amount the country received in legitimate foreign investment. And the digital revolution that was supposed to empower Nigerians instead deepened inequality. While cities gained fast internet and global access, rural communities were left behind, widening the gap in education and opportunity. Corruption breeds distrust. Distrust drives away investment, and without investment, poverty grows, fueling even more corruption. It's a vicious cycle that has repeated for decades. Still, there are reasons for optimism. Since the 2014 crash, Nigeria has slowly begun to recover. With over 220 million people, most of them young, the country has immense potential if it can focus on reform, education, and infrastructure. Agriculture offers one of the best paths forward. Less than 1% of farmland is irrigated, and fertilizer use is still rare. But with investment in training, equipment, and security, Nigeria could transform its farms into engines of growth. Climate change and land conflicts remain major threats, yet the country's fertile region still holds enormous promise. Nigeria's location is another advantage. Sitting on the Atlantic, it's ideally placed to become a manufacturing and export hub. But for that to happen, corruption must be reduced, wages stabilized, and small businesses supported. If citizens and foreign investors could trust that their efforts wouldn't be swallowed by bureaucracy or theft, growth could accelerate rapidly. Oil, too, could still be part of the solution if managed responsibly. Nigeria produces around 2 million barrels a day, but its 4 state-owned refineries are outdated and frequently shut down. Theft, neglect, and poor maintenance make refining unreliable. Attempts to bring in foreign companies have mostly failed, as few want to invest in such a risky environment. At its core, Nigeria's struggle isn't just about oil, poverty, or crime. It's about trust. Without credible institutions, without transparency, and without social stability, no amount of natural wealth can sustain long-term growth. The story of Nigeria is a story of what happens when perception overtakes potential. A country can have a good GDP, oil reserves, and population, but if the world doesn't believe in its stability, those numbers mean little. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. And yet, Nigeria's greatest resource has never been its oil. It's been its people. Innovative, entrepreneurial, and determined to succeed, despite the odds. Across technology, music, and culture, Nigerians continue to make their mark globally. That spirit, if paired with honest governance and serious reform, could still rewrite the nation's story. To move forward, Nigeria must fix the basics, strengthen its institutions, ensure accountability, and invest in education and infrastructure. A functioning power grid, secure farmlands, and reliable industries would transform lives faster than any new oil fields ever could. Reputation may take years to rebuild, but it's possible, because while the world once knew Nigeria for corruption and chaos, it could one day know it for resilience and renewal. The lesson of Nigeria is clear. Natural wealth alone doesn't make a nation rich. Trust does. And if Nigeria can restore that trust with its people and with the world, it might finally fulfill the promise it was destined for all along. Make sure to let us know your thought in the comments, and also make sure to subscribe for Out Next interesting video coming soon. This is Rob, and you are watching Beyond Economy.